Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sydney Bowman. I want to thank you for joining us for the Cloud Recovery for Hurricane Preparedness webinar brought to you by NewCloud Networks and Veeam. Today we're going to hear from Ken Kopelman, who's a Senior Sales Manager at NewCloud Networks, and also Brandon McCoy, who's a Veeam Solutions Engineer. If at any time during the webinar you have questions, please use the chat feature at the top of your screen or to the right of your screen for some of you. All questions will be addressed at the end. I do want to note that hurricanes can be catastrophic events and preparing for them is not to be taken lightly. So in addition to what we covered today, we suggest that you visit the National Weather Service website for real-time updates on hurricane risks and preparedness. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ken Kopelman. Ken?
Thanks, Sydney. Good afternoon, everybody. Ken Kopelman with NewCloud Networks. We appreciate everybody's time in visiting with us in regards to hurricane preparedness. As we know, with hurricanes can be hugely devastating. They're powerful tropical storms in the Atlantic and also in the Northeast Pacific Oceans with sustained winds of on average about 74. As we see, looking back into 2017, we see a lot of devastating hurricanes that had happened. Just to recap, some of the three named storms that actually were Cat 3, Cat 4 storms. We take a look back at Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was average wind speeds that actually hit the Texas coast was about 111 miles an hour, and devastation that it caused to the Houston area. The other one that comes to mind is Hurricane Irma. Irma actually hit the Florida Keys at about 145 miles an hour, just devastating the Keys and the Key West on that side. And then the third was Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. It was an actual Cat 4 storm that rolled through and hit the island at about 155 miles an hour. These storms are actually measured by wind speeds and categories from 1 to 5, and these being major hurricanes. The damage that these, on an average base that we do see, is about $28 million per year. And being prepared before these hurricanes is going to be hugely important, not only for families, but also for businesses in the midst of a disaster. So who's at risk? If you take a look at the United States map there on the Atlantic side, typically these hurricanes are start out in the Atlantic and roll through the eastern seaboard and also into the Gulf of Mexico, usually picking up steam once it gets into the Gulf, getting high wind speeds and high surge that happens to hit these coastlines in Texas, in Florida, Louisiana. You start taking a look at major catastrophic historical storms that have actually hit the coast. You start talking about Hurricane Katrina that actually just devastated New Orleans, with the walls, breaking through, flooding out the whole city, was just a complete disaster. You start to see, the outer bands of these hurricanes start reaching inland into Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, with these outer wind bands that actually bring high wind speeds and, heavy doses of rain that actually cause flooding, power outages, things that are actually devastating to businesses and families to be in regional power outages. The hurricane stats, is what we're seeing, from 2017. There were 17 named storms. There was 10 hurricanes that happened, 6 major hurricanes. And in 2017, the total cost of destruction was about $200 billion. In 2018, it's going to be an active season. From what we know from the Colorado State University, there's going to be 14 named storms, 7 to become hurricanes, and 3 to be major. And that's why we're here today, is to talk about preparedness before these hurricanes or tropical storms that happen, to make sure that not only families are prepared, but also businesses have the things that they need to be successful through these type of events. So let's talk preparedness. So protecting your home is hugely important, making sure that our families and the home is taken care of. One, making sure that you have enough food to last for about 5 days. Water, making sure that you have the electrical piece taken care of from the power side, redundant power generators, making sure that you have a contact list for doctors, lawyers, insurance agencies, to be able to make sure that when the storm is over with, you have the appropriate contact information, schools, with all your information, with your family members, with your email and cell phone information, preparing contact cards, so you know how to contact your family in the midst of a disaster. Ensuring that you have the proper supplies, making sure you have flashlights and all these different things that you need in regards to emergency services contact information. So hurricane preparedness checklist, the workplace. This is going to be hugely important, protecting your employees and your property, knowing that you have an alert notification system, that you're uploading all your employees' contact information, how to contact, the emergency Red Cross if need be, but also having redundant power and knowing that you know exactly what type of kilowatt generator, redundant diesel fuel that's going to be there to be able to run the business for 3 to 5 business days after a hurricane comes through or flooding that happens, to make sure that you have the right preparedness checklist that's in place. These important documents and information from the business perspective is hugely important. Uploading contracts into a software, into alert notification system to make sure that, one, you have your insurance policies that are there, all these important contracts that you have in place for insurance and all your employees' information. So at time of disaster, you can actually send out alert notifications to not only your employees, but your vendors, your supply chain, and also to your customers, because at time of disaster, it's going to be important if you are going to be down to let your customers know what is happening, because what we know is after 48 hours, if you're not back up and operational and communicating with your customers, you tend to lose 30% of your customer base not knowing what's going on. So making sure that you have a checklist, important documents, document preparedness, and also for your employees. So protecting your data for cloud recovery, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brandon, so he can actually take you through the 3-2-1 rule and being protected from your data side.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. And just real quick, audio check. Are you guys hearing me coming through okay? It seems to be a little bit of choppiness on the line. Not sure if that's on my side or just the audio.
We can hear you.
Okay, must just be in my headset. My apologies. So, yeah, guys, this is Brandon McCoy. I'm a cloud system engineer, and I actually live in Georgia, one of those areas that does get affected from storms from time to time. Last year, a big tree fell by my house, which rendered all my power out for a couple of days and internet for even longer. Obviously, not so big of a deal from a personal perspective versus a business, not having being able to service our customers and whatnot, but it just shows that these kinds of things do happen and we have to be prepared. So one of the first big things is the 3-2-1 rule. Now, Veeam did not create the 3-2-1 rule. We're just a big proponent of it. And that 3-2-1 rule means having 3 different copies of your data, 2 of them being on different media and 1 of them being off-site. So the idea is you have a copy of your production workloads, and then you have 2 additional copies of backups, maybe 1 on a NAS device, 1 on a rotated hard drive, or even tape that is air-gapped. And a lot of people seem to think the tape is kind of an off-site or at least offline method. However, that tape device is oftentimes still in the same physical location. So it's really great to have your backups off-site as well, physically located miles away from any kind of storms or other natural disaster. That's why the cloud is such a great option for that. Can you switch to the next slide, please? Thanks. So extending availability to the cloud, Veeam does this through Cloud Connect. So Veeam does not offer our own cloud storage services or any kind of appliances, hardware. We're strictly a software-only company. However, we team up with NewCloud and others to provide you with a great a great cloud opportunity. So basically, Cloud Connect is built into the software itself. On your side, you're just connecting into NewCloud's data center. And so these three things that we see here, a comprehensive availability strategy. So maybe you need more than just your backups there. Maybe you need a warm site failover. You really need to think through, if something were to happen, am I okay with just having a backup, or do I have more strict recovery time objectives? Do I need to be able to fail over seamlessly? And NewCloud can help you with that, of course. Then cutting costs, right? So, you could always have your own second data center, but then you have to worry about the overhead, the payroll for the IT administrators who are going to be managing that infrastructure, monthly rent costs, property taxes, power, electricity, all that good stuff. So, just sending your backups to another service provider who already has an infrastructure in place can really cut those costs. And that kind of ties into reducing complexity as well. Not needing to set up, complicated networking parameters, and not having to worry so much about testing and things like that. Using a cloud provider such as NewCloud can really help you, especially since they have Veeam on the other side, so they can help you when you run into snags as well. Sorry about that. So there's two kinds of Cloud Connect features. There's backup as a service and disaster recovery as a service. So backup as a service is just like it sounds, right? We take a backup file and we send it to another disk. If something were to happen at your site, maybe a couple VMs go down or a file was deleted, maybe your local backup storage was corrupted, you could take the backups from that secondary site and restore them over the WAN into your environment. Now, you may have stricter, like I said, recovery time objectives. That's where disaster recovery as a service is going to come into play, and especially, with what we're talking about today, which is hurricane, readiness, being able to fail over to a secondary site. So with NewCloud, you're able to actually take full VMs, put them on another site, and if your whole site were to go down, or maybe even a portion of a couple hosts, you could have those automatically spun up at the other location. And so we'll take a look at that. So this is kind of what that looks like. We have an overview of Cloud Connect going into the NewCloud data center. So on the left-hand side, you see your environment here. This is with VMware Hyper-V. Of course, Veeam does provide backups for physical machines as well. But when we're talking about disaster recovery as a service, it's really truly only for those virtual environments. So you have your VMware or Hyper-V. And we're going to be using some replication services to get those off-site, right? We have an SSL connection that goes across the internet into a cloud gateway. That cloud gateway is just the VPN service to securely send your backups across the internet into NewCloud's data center. They have the like host over there, a VMware or Hyper-V, and they've partitioned off for you the production storage, compute, and memory needed to run X number of VMs in some sort of failure. So this is what a replication job typically looks like, right? We have the VPN connection between your side and NewCloud side. So data travels across that VPN over that SSL connection. We got the little circular arrows on both sides. Those are the data movers, the proxies. Veeam is an agentless backup software solution. So rather than having some agent installed on every VM, taking up valuable resources, instead we use these proxies to make API calls, which can write those VMDK files or those VHD files to the secondary host where you will have for a DR scenario. We also have the enterprise manager. So on the right-hand side here at the bottom of the NewCloud location, we see these little orange guys. So that's going to be the backup servers as well as the enterprise manager. The enterprise manager would be something that you could use to monitor multiple backup servers and to execute failover plans if you so needed. If this backup server on the left-hand side that you see here was maybe unavailable. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, I might not have the best internet. What kind of resources am I going to need to take these replications across the WAN? And that's a great question, because with doing a regular backup, you have a certain number of VMs. Those VMs are compressed and deduped and really, they really go down in size, and they're sent across the WAN, so it's a little bit faster. However, with replication, that's not the case. There is no deduplication. It is a full copy of a VM going across the WAN. So in that case, we may want to involve replica seeding. Replica seeding is going to look like this. You do a regular job and you store it to your local repository here, and then you put that on an external hard drive that you could actually ship to the service provider, physically. Once it arrives at that other location, we'll rehydrate the data into their repository and then send that to the host. So that first full replica job will be on the host, and from there, after those VMs are in the powered off state on that host, we can just point the incremental changes to those replicas. So the first full, sent over physically, and then the incrementals are the only thing that will traverse the WAN. So you may also be asking yourself, well, if this is a Veeam powered service and I have to use Veeam to execute these failover plans, what happens if, my production site goes down? More importantly, if my production site is Veeam, has Veeam on it, right? Because Veeam can be installed on a virtual machine running on your production environment just fine. So if that whole production site goes down, you have no Veeam, right? You may not even have a place to reinstall Veeam. No worries. In that case, NewCloud can provide you a tenant logon to where either through a tablet or a mobile phone, laptop, you could actually execute your failover plan, have those VMs spun up in a certain way via a web portal, and have all your machines turn on. You could even specify how long it takes for each one to turn on, etc. And then finally, we take a look at failback. So, when we fail over to the replicas running at the service provider's location, we're running off those snapshots. Now, those machines are fully functional VMs. They're not any slower. They're not, they're just the same as the original production VMs. However, the changes that we're making on those replicas, they have to be saved somewhere. So at some point, we're going to hopefully have our production site come back on. When that happens, what we're going to do is we're just going to fail back. And this is all clickable items in the Veeam GUI. It's not very complicated. We're simply taking the changes that occurred while the replicas were running, and then we fail those back into production so that we can continue on before whatever kind of outage happened. And then we get to worrying about, sure, I've got these replicas on the other side. I've got backups. I'm doing the 3-2-1. Everything is good. However, how do we know that these backups are not are going to be running, right? How do we know that all this is going to work when we need it? So that's what. Sorry, my mouse must be doing some crazy stuff. So that's what the Sure Backup and Sure Replica is going to do, right? So what we can do is in your environment, we can create what we call a virtual lab, sometimes referred to as a data lab, and we can schedule the backups or the replicas to be spun up inside of this lab. Now, this lab is really just a Linux VM kernel that we deploy on your host. It's very lightweight, and it's all kind of wizard-driven. There's no complex setup. The backups are spun up into this environment. Everything is compressed and deduped as far as backups are concerned, so it's very lightweight. The replicas are the true VMs, but again, completely outside of production. And we're going to do application checks, ping checks, heartbeat checks, right? So if it's a RDP server, we're going to check port 3389. If it's a SQL server, we'll check SQL log paths. Heartbeat tests on VM tools or Hyper-V integration checks. So much more than just a screenshot, right, to make sure that your VM is powered on from those backups. And the same thing with replication, so that you can really ensure that in the event of a disaster, all your machines will be able to spin on automatically, and you won't have any issues. And that's a complete solution that we provide with both Veeam and NewCloud. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ken. Thanks.
Thanks, Brandon. So the NewCloud Networks overview. We were actually founded in 1988. Our world headquarters is based here in Denver, Colorado. We are our global provider of custom cloud computing and cloud communications. We do have over 20,000 subscribers and over 2,500 customers in every different industry and every different vertical that's out there, from healthcare to public and private sector, manufacturing, financial institutions, i.e. banks and credit unions, software companies. We take security and redundancy very seriously. Every data center that we have throughout the world is all HIPAA and PCI, SOC 2 Type 1 compliance. We are a Veeam CSP partner from the platinum level. We're one of the original launch partners back when Veeam first came out with Cloud Connect as a repository that's there. We've got a very strong relationship with Veeam, from the backup and disaster recovery, but also with VMware. We're from the enterprise level. So if you currently have Veeam or VMware on premise, it's a pretty seamless integration. We do have customers that come on board with us that are backing up within 15 minutes. It's very quick. And so what you're seeing here is our NewCloud's ultra-low latency network. This has been designed for backup and disaster recovery. We have data centers across the U.S. and also in Germany. This MPLS network that you're seeing here is owned and operated by NewCloud Networks. It's a 10 gig pipe that interconnects to all these data centers. It's very lightning fast. It's no more than 25 milliseconds from data center to data center. So once you have virtualized your environment with Veeam, it's just easy as 1, 2, 3 of add service provider and add location, and you're backing up very quickly. As you can see with the geographical redundancy that's there, if one location goes down, it fails over to the next location. And so if you're in San Francisco and you want to back up in New York, high latency is not good for backup and disaster recovery. We recommend that you go within a little bit outside of 500 to 1,000 miles to a data center that's nearest you. So the FlexPod technology that we do have is that best-in-breed technology that's out there from VMware, NetApp, and Cisco. So when you start talking about a CapEx model of doing it yourself versus an OpEx model, it just makes it more cost-effective to leave it to the experts from a cloud computing to be able to do backup and disaster recovery. So the products and services that NewCloud provides for our customers, our foundation where we started at 30 years ago was started as a telecom organization as network as a service. So we provide United Communications as a service or hosted PBX, backup and disaster recovery. And all the customers that we do have in the 30 years, backup and disaster recovery as a service has been a big one. We do see this a lot just because of the failing over and the failing back that Brandon was talking about. We do testing with our customers today to be able to do these tests with our certified engineers that are Veeam and VMware certified, so we can actually do testing in regards to disaster recovery as a service. Also, we do have customers today that want to get into more of the virtual private data center as a service, want to be on their own private cloud. Maybe their PCI SOC 2, maybe there's some compliance regulations that are there. And if you have a need for a virtual private data center, or maybe you want to go away with the data center that you guys currently have and look to go to a full managed services with NewCloud Networks, we can provide that service for you also. So desktop as a service or virtual desktop infrastructure, being a VMware service provider, we have VMware Horizon Client, which will also go with virtual private data centers. So if you want to virtualize your desktops and move to the cloud with NewCloud Networks, we can also help you with that. And finally, this is a big one here as a managed services. We do have about 25 certified engineers that are in our NOC that's here in Denver that work with our customers from O365 migrations to O365 backup, backup as a service, DRaaS, production cloud. We can handle all that full managed services on the back end. So NewCloud Differentiators, this is where we really separate ourselves from our competition that's out there, those big white boxes, is the customization. We actually work with solution architects with our customers on the pre-side before they become customers to understand what their needs are, charge them for what they're actually using versus what they don't need. And it brings it more to an affordable pricing and easily controls cost that you have a static bill that's monthly. Since we own and operate our own MPLS network, we don't charge ingress or egress bandwidth charges, which a lot of other organizations out there actually charge that. So you're seeing multiple bills. You don't know what that cost is going to consist of on a monthly premium, but with NewCloud Networks, you're going to get that static bill. Also, from us, our white glove service support that we do provide to all of our 2,500 customers, which leads us to a 95% retention rate, is our back-end service, our white glove. So customers that do come on, they get a personalized account manager that's included in their monthly fee. Also a full project manager that's going to be helping them with their project to go to provisioning with it, and then working with our certified engineers that's there. We believe we're a 24/7 by 365 organization, that we're here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We've had multiple customers over the years that have actually been impacted by disasters that have called us at 2 a.m. and we were there to answer the call, to get them back up and operational very quickly so they're back to business as usual. And each of our data centers, they're all HIPAA, PCI, SOC 2 Type 1. So if you do have some compliance or regulatory issues from a financial services, or maybe it's a mortgage industry where you're getting pressure from auditors that do come through that are asking for this, we'll provide certifications for you to be able to meet those audits with those examiners. This nationwide ultra-low latency network, there's nobody else on this planet that has what we have with this. We have built this out to be that low latency, to be able to get your data off-premise, migrated into our cloud, and to be able to set those RPOs and those RTOs through the software, and to be able to set those and to make sure that that latency is there for you once you ride our backbone to our data centers. And then the modern tech architecture that we do have. That's the FlexPod technology. We don't cut corners. With NetApp is one of the leading providers that are out there with Veeam and VMware and all the NetApp architecture that we do have. We have all that stuff that's in place. We don't cut corners on the technology on the back end for our customers. And then hurricane preparedness with NewCloud. NewCloud, will help you prepare for disaster. Disaster recovery as a service. When you do come on board with us, we can go through an assessment with you, see where the holes are in your environment, look to be able to backfill those, but also utilizing the compute and RAM, and to be able to test it, to be able to fail over and fail back, do an actual disaster recovery scenario so you know that that plan works. And then backup as a service. Backup as a service is one of our leading providers with disaster recovery as a service. And that disaster recovery planning and the DR testing, these are all huge components, before hurricane season or in the midst of it, to make sure that you are protected in the event of any type of interruption that's there. So some of the next steps, what we believe in is, if you're interested in learning more about Veeam or NewCloud, we do have that strong background in networking and disaster preparedness. We would love to be able to set up a call with you to understand what you guys are currently doing for disaster recovery. Are you currently testing today? What are you guys doing? Are you comfortable with your plan? You can download our disaster recovery checklist that's located on number 2. And then our contact information if you'd like some more information. My name's Ken Kopelman. I am the Senior Sales Manager. My contact information's there, and Brandon's information is also there from Veeam as a sales engineer. So with that, we'll go ahead and kind of open it up for any questions that you guys might have on the call today. Hopefully this was very educational, and we look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Great. Thanks, Ken. All right, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat feature now. All right. We do have one that's coming in here. Brandon, it looks like this one might be for you. What's the difference between a backup and a replica?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Sydney. I get asked that question a lot. So, some people confuse a copy of a backup as a replica. They say, I want to replicate my data offsite. Well, in terms of Veeam, replication is so a backup, start there. A backup is a flat file that's put on a disk, right? It has to be rehydrated. It's just, sitting in cold storage. A replica is a VMDK or a VHD file, the whole VM, and it's actually mirrored, sitting on production storage at another host with compute memory. If you were to go into vCenter, you would actually see those virtual machines registered in inventory, and it would take as long as it takes to boot up that machine in order for it to be operational.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. We do have another one that just came in here. So how do you test your DR plan with NewCloud?
Yeah, great question, Sid. So testing your DR plan, and this is where we really thrive in this as being one of the leaders for disaster recovery as a service. we will actually, work with you in regards to one of our project managers and our engineers to understand, what is your daily rate of change, understanding what your bandwidth requirements are, knowing that if there's a failover test, we currently do about 10 of these every quarter with our customers, making sure that everything is set up from the VPN tunnel piece, connected back to our backbone of our network, and then setting things up. And since we actually have a full mirror image of Veeam and VMware, we can actually look to test them, and so you can see that the test is currently working. Testing the RAM and the CPU and understanding what your virtual machines consist of. We actually are very thorough within this to know which VMs that you want to fail over at any given time. So we actually plan and prepare with that. We do a checklist with you before we do the test, and then we schedule that out over periods of time to be able to test it. So if you're down for 48 hours, to be able to fail over and then failing back and having an expert like NewCloud Networks be able to test that before you get into any type of disaster that's there.
Yeah, and that was a great question. One of the biggest areas of disaster recovery that is looked over or forgotten is actually testing the plan. So if you actually go through all the efforts to put a disaster recovery plan in place, you want to make sure that it actually works. So testing it is very important, and NewCloud can help you undergo that test. Another question just came through. How do you know when to fail over in the event of a disaster? That's a great question.
Yeah, so understanding, maybe, with hurricanes, they provide tornadoes, and understanding of tracking that to be able to watch your weather reports, knowing that if you're in Florida or Louisiana, or if you're up in the Northeast where Sandy actually hit, knowing if it's on a beeline to you, it would probably be a good idea, to reach out to NewCloud Networks, your account manager, and then start setting those plans in motion. So you can actually, stand down if need be. There's no cost, additional cost to do that. But knowing that if it's coming towards you, to be able to go ahead and be on the safe side, to be able to go ahead and fail over to NewCloud Networks and running your environment with us, even to be on the safe side. So we can do that, and then once the storm is over with, everything is passed, and you guys are back up and operational, where the building's up, there's power that's there, infrastructure on the backside, and we can look to fail over. But again, we can work through that process with you.
Great, thanks. Brandon, did you have something to add to that? I thought I heard you chime in there.
Nope, I'm good over here.
All right. It doesn't look like we have any other questions in the chat. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys some time back in your day. So thank you very much for joining the Hurricane Preparedness webinar with Cloud Recovery from NewCloud and Veeam, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.